to the 4th episode of Concussion Chats. My name's Taya. Concussion Chats is a podcast hosted by the McGill Students for the Concussion Legacy Foundation with the help of Nick from Concussion Talk podcast. We hope to provide hope and strength to those suffering from concussions through sharing experiences. Today I have a recording of Dane Wagner's talk to our concussion support group. Dane is a former Mcgill University linebacker and a recent grad who stopped playing football due to concussions. Dane now spends his free time running, playing volleyball, exploring new music and recipes.
Hey everybody, my name is Dane. Thanks for the lovely introduction, Taya. My pronouns are he and his. I also just want to preface this speech with a warning. I'm at my grandmother's house right now. She does have some sort of parakeet or cockatoo that likes to squawk periodically. So if you hear that, don't be alarmed. If it gets too bad, I'll go outside or maybe just set it free. Who knows? All right, let's get started. All right, so today I'll just be telling you guys a little bit about my story and kind of how I recovered as well. So I'll start from day one. I grew up in a small town in Florida. You guys may have heard us talking about that earlier. Basically here, football was king. It was like everything. The whole town rallied around our high school team. It was kind of like hockey is for many of you Canadians. It was, I had a great time playing football in high school. It was a way for me to, have fun, and also kind of got me to McGill. So one of the reasons I was successful in football was this kind of fearless play style that I had. Unfortunately, it's a game where if you are willing to run into someone full speed and put your helmet into theirs, you're going to be pretty good. And that was something I really enjoyed doing. Sadly, it was something I was taught to do. And it's something that never really caused me any issues growing up, at least not that I could, recognize. So I eventually made my way to McGill. That's a whole nother story that could take a long time to tell. I played linebacker there. I found some quick success on the field, at least individually. I started my first game there, had a great rookie season, and things were looking up for me. Doing well in school, doing well in football. It seemed like I really had it all together, And then second year, wasn't quite as well individually, but it was, we made the playoffs as a team for the first time in like 5 years, so I considered it a successful season. So our last regular season game of my second year, I believe we were playing University of Montreal, and it was pretty late in the game. The quarterback was scrambling out. I was running, trying to tackle him. Next thing I know, I'm blindsided by quite a big player on Montreal. My head kind of hits the turf. I know I blacked out for at least a second, but the primary concern of mine was that the wind was knocked out of me, and anyone that's ever had that done to them, I'm sure most people have. It's pretty scary. You can't breathe. So I went to the locker room, they checked me out, saw if I had any concussion symptoms or anything. I was like, no, I'm feeling fine. I just had the wind knocked out of me. I can go back in, because I truly did feel fine. The adrenaline was still in me and everything felt normal. I just wanted to get back out there, help my team out. So I ended up finishing that game. I believe we had another quarter left. And then I just recall after the game, I just did not feel right. I got home, the adrenaline wore off. I just had a pounding headache, and headaches were pretty normal after football games, but not like this. And I didn't think much of it. I took a nap, took some Advil, and then like an idiot went out drinking that night with my teammates. But anyways, for the rest of the week, I just did not feel right. I couldn't pinpoint what exactly it was, but I knew something was up. However, I didn't tell anyone. I was under the impression that we were in the playoffs. I was, a key player, and this was the first time we had been there in so long. I had to play. But I just remember that next playoff game where I was playing and I wasn't feeling right. I was playing scared, which is something I never did. Luckily, I didn't take any bad shots to the head that game, but I know afterwards I was just not feeling right. I still decided not to tell anyone because I thought the doctors or my coaches would be mad at me if I had knowingly played with a concussion. So I decided I would just kind of deal with it on my own. I, rested for a week. And then I thought I was feeling a little bit better. And then I was playing some pickup basketball with some teammates of mine, took a bad fall, headaches, came back. I couldn't even tell you what other symptoms there were, but that's when I finally went to the doctor and they told me, yeah, you have a concussion, take it easy for a few weeks. Did that. The symptoms went away, thankfully, at least then. And so that was my first concussion in football. I didn't really think much about it, afterwards, about the potential long-term effects. To be totally honest with you, I avoided reading anything about concussions or traumatic brain injuries. The movie with Will Smith that came out, Concussion, I wouldn't watch it. I probably I definitely knew I had suffered some, and to be honest, I didn't want to think about it. I just wanted to, put my head down, keep enjoying playing football. So the next year, so this is my third year, I had a very, very good season, breakout season. I won a lot of team awards. It was probably my best season ever. I was doing well in school, all that, but I remember there were a few games where I took some hits that were definitely pretty sketchy. Although I never missed any time that year, I started to notice kind of during that season and afterwards for the next year or so, certain things about myself that weren't normal, such as I was in kind of a constant mental fog. It seemed like I couldn't really focus as well as I previously could. It was often difficult for me to find my words in conversations with people, especially, more intellectual, I guess, conversations like, school conferences and things like that. I just often found myself struggling to even be able to find what I wanted to say. And it was a very odd feeling for me. I had no idea what it could be from. I never spoke to anyone about this, but it wasn't constantly there, but it was typically there. Now that I think back on it, it was especially there if I was, stressed out. But anyways, yeah, I never spoke to anyone about this, but it is something that I kind of battled with within my own head for quite a while. It caused me a lot of I would say social anxiety, but I don't know if it was quite to that level, but I would find myself avoiding interacting with new people just because I felt as though I couldn't even conversate with them. I felt as though, I was too stupid or what have you. I didn't know what was going on with me, but it kind of changed who I was as a person. But like I said, I didn't even think that football could have anything to do with this. I didn't know what was happening with me. So then the next year, my fourth year, go back to McGill. Everything's going well. I'm named team captain of the football team. I was pretty ecstatic about that. Then our first game, once again, against University of Montreal, I remember it was very late in the game. We were getting our butts kicked, as we often do by them, sadly. They call a blitz for me, which means I basically try to time myself up with the snap of the ball and just hit the line running full speed, which I did. I timed it up perfectly. I collided with the running back in the backfield, and next thing I knew, I just got up. It felt like a bell was ringing inside my skull. It was so weird, but it was a good hit. It was a good play. And of course, as teammates do in football, all my teammates came over to me and, started slapping my head, headbutting me. Sadly, that's how we celebrate. But yeah, I knew at this point I was a little more aware about the adverse effects of a concussion, especially after my first one. I didn't want to deal with it as poorly as I had previously. So I, let the trainers come on the field. They took me out, underwent all the symptom testing and whatnot, and they diagnosed me with another concussion. And I didn't think too much about it. I was like, oh, this is football. Like, kind of just happens. A few weeks, I'll be fine. And I did notice, however, that mental fogginess, that inability to find the words that I wanted to say, that did get a little more severe. However, it had, been present for so long that I, once again, didn't really think it had too much to do with the concussion. But anyway, 3 weeks go by. I go through the protocol, the return to play protocol, and I'm eventually, I'm back out there on the field in 3 weeks playing in a game. And I play 2 games. I'm fine. I don't take any bad hits to the head or anything. But then my third game back, pretty early on in the game, I remember I was playing linebacker. We were at University of Sherbrooke. They threw a little pass to their running back, who was this massive, 6'3", 240-pound guy. And I go out there to tackle him. I kind of break down, and he just kind of puts his head down, like the crown of his head toward me. I try to get as low as I can to tackle his legs. I can't get any lower. So as I try to get lower, my head goes down, kind of our crowns meet. And it's a pretty nasty hit, but I don't black out or anything. And I stay in the game. My coaches are asking if I'm all right. I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. But then I just started making very silly mistakes on easy plays. And my coaches pull me out of there. They're like, are you sure you're fine? Because that you've never done anything like that. And I was like, I don't know if I'm fine or not. And he's like, all right, you're coming out. And so I stayed out the rest of the game. I remember being at the bus, and I was just in tears because I kind of knew. I was like, all right, this isn't a joke anymore. 2 in 5 weeks or whatever. This is, probably going to be the last time I play football. And I did not really want the last time I played football to be in a loss at the University of Sherbrooke. I don't know if anyone's ever been to their field. It's just kind of a depressing place. So yeah, I had kind of come to terms with the fact that this would be the last time I would play. And I was, it wasn't the greatest thing in the world to have to go to practice every day and, be there for your team as the captain, but not be able to play and be feeling like crap. But, I kind of came to terms with the fact that, okay, this is fine. I had a good career. I want to get better now. I want to move on to the next thing, just continue to do well in school, whatever. I thought, all right, this is my third one. It might take a little longer, maybe a month, maybe even 2. 2 months go by. The symptoms are really hardly improving. And it's just, the brain fog, headaches. Let's see, noise sensitivity was a big one for me. I started having really severe neck pain, and that was awful. But they didn't really ever get better. They just kind of stayed stagnant. And then I eventually started getting on this exercise program. Some of you may have tried it. It's kind of I think it's like the Buffalo protocol. We were talking about it a few weeks ago, kind of a version of that where you monitor your heart rates, go on the bike a few minutes, and keep increasing that, whatever. And I finally started to feel a little bit better, and I was just ecstatic to even be able to exercise just a little bit. It was great. And then finals came around, and the stress of finals, constantly having to study, just made the symptoms kind of come back worse than ever. And I remember that final season. I basically spent a week straight locked in my basement apartment without windows. I would just study for 45 minutes, an hour, and then just go lay on my bed with like my eyes closed for like 15, 20 minutes, go back and do it again for like a week straight. And I was like, all right, this is my low. This is as bad as it's going to get. Little did I know. But anyhow, I went back home, finals over with, kind of made it through, did okay on them. After about 3 weeks being back home, I started to feel kind of normal again. That mental clarity was there. And it was the best thing ever. It was the biggest feeling of relief ever, to be able to actually think and not have this constant brain fog. And it was great. And I went back to school. I was like, okay, I'm recovered. I'm going to, attack this semester head on. I'm going to work out every day, do yoga 2 times a week, kill my classes. I was taking a pretty difficult course load. I was like, I got this, I'm ready to go. I'm a new man. And everything was going great for the first few weeks. And then I remember I had a biology exam, and just after that exam, it was a very tough exam. I didn't get the, extra accommodations, like extra time that I probably should have. I thought I didn't need it. And I just remember after that exam, my head was throbbing, absolutely, just this throbbing headache. And I woke up the next day, it was still there. The brain fog was there. It was terrible. It had kind of started to slowly come as I was studying for the exam. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, how is this coming back? That's not possible. And next thing you know, symptoms came back basically worse than ever. Headaches were terrible, noise sensitivity, the neck pain, brain fog, all of that. And, I was devastated. I was like, I thought I made it through this terrible thing. But I didn't. Now it's back. I got to start from square one. Like, what am I going to do? And I started trying to calculate why my symptoms had come back. I was like, oh, it's because, I was taking this many classes, or I was, sleeping this many hours. That's the reason why. This is the reason why. If I do this and that, I'll be okay. I tried to kind of make a formula out of it. And the reality was I just kind of went too hard. And I didn't realize that. I started kind of trying to control, everything. I started to try to control, the amount of time I spent on my phone per day, the amount of time I spent looking at screens in general. I was like, if I sleep this much, study this much, look at this, screens for this much, I'll be fine. I'll be totally fine. I thought I had it down to a formula. Like I said, I just started trying to control everything. And then, sadly, you can't control everything. And then next thing you know, one night, have a few assignments due, whatever, and heart just starts pounding. I was having a panic attack. It was the first one I'd ever experienced. was like the most terrifying thing in my life at the time. I'm sure many of you have experienced the same thing. But yeah, it was not a fun outcome. But my roommate kind of talked me through it, but I still had no idea what it was. And then just for the next, few weeks or so, I was just constantly anxious, like on the verge of having panic attacks every day. Didn't really know what was happening to my body. Was super freaked out. It was pretty terrifying, especially having no idea what it was. That was like the worst part. And so one day, I just kind of in a panic, I try to see my doctor at the McGill Sports Medicine Clinic. He's not in. It is, I guess he's out of town doing something. There's another guy in there. I'm like, hey, can you guys give me something for this? I can't focus. I can't study. I can't sleep. This is terrible. Just give me something to help me sleep and I'll deal with the rest. They prescribed me a low dose of some antidepressant. And they were like, oh, it's just going to help you sleep. It may help your mood a little bit, whatever. But I started taking that. It started giving me terrible side effects, dizziness, like straight up vertigo. Felt like my head was spinning anytime I turned my head. And as you guys have probably experienced similar symptoms from the concussion itself. So here I am thinking I'm experiencing all these new concussion symptoms. It's really affecting my vision. Like, I don't know, this may be getting a little too detailed, but it's really screwing with my vision. My vestibular system is all messed up, basically. I can't like look at a screen or read without like having terrible eye strain. And, I'm under the impression that my concussion symptoms are getting worse, but it's actually, the triad of symptoms from the side effects of the drugs, the anxiety, and the concussion. It was a really weird time. And I was eventually able to, pinpoint, actually those symptoms, was giving me worse anxiety, but then the drugs itself was helping with the anxiety. It was really weird. My body felt like a chemical cocktail, basically. And I eventually was able to pinpoint that, okay, these symptoms were from the drug. I should probably get off this. Saw my doctor, got off it. The vertigo remained. And I was like, what? This can't be, this can't be. Saw a psychologist. She was like, oh yeah, we see this all the time. The only way to like get rid of the vertigo is to stop compensating for it, stop like being really slow, whatever. So I don't know, that was just a crazy experience. But eventually, I made it through the semester. I basically deferred all my exams. I was able to go back home. Luckily, I had the opportunity to go stay with my parents, not work, and kind of just focus on recovering for a while. And that's what I did that summer. I just tried to let go of all extraneous stressors. I really devoted myself to that exercise program that my doctor had given me, which is apparently been proven to, help people with these prolonged symptoms, post-concussion syndrome, if you will. And that was what kind of eventually got me over the hump, was that program. I'd be happy to share it with anyone after this. I believe I couldn't find a link to it, but I have pictures of all the sheets of it. So I could share those with you guys. But so it was, it was a wild ride. And then after about 8 to 9 months of that last concussion was when I really, stopped having symptoms, and I stopped tuning in to my own body so hard and looking for those symptoms, which is the hardest thing to do, is to kind of like get out of this hyper aware state that so many of us get into. We go into protection mode. We want to protect ourselves. We want to do everything we can that's right. But sometimes like You got to let some things be. You can't try to control everything is my number one piece of advice. I think we might be getting close to time, so I can share other advice if anyone has any questions or anything. But yeah, that's my story. And now I've been symptom free for a year and like 3 months now. And I would say that, I'm changed forever from that experience, but ultimately I emerged from it more self-aware, healthier, actually. In a weird way, I think it was a blessing in disguise because otherwise, I might still be playing football and, taking those subconcussive hits that can really do some long-term damage. But yeah, that's it. If anyone has any questions.
Hey, Dane, real quick, what are you doing now in life?
Oh, in life. I'm just, hanging out watching this bird, but no. Yeah, so I just graduated McGill. Well, just graduated. I graduated in December. Since then, I have been, I spent like 4 months studying for the MCAT, which is the entrance exam to get into medical school. So that is my plan as of now. Since then, I've been back in Florida, moved back to Florida to spend the summer here working on the beach. Just needed to make some extra cash. And yeah, just been working on the beach, applying to med school, and trying to figure out what that next step is. So, yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Dane. In prior support meetings, Dane had discussed some vitamins and supplements that he found really helpful throughout his recovery. So we have an additional clip of him just sharing what really helped him.
Let's see. So one thing that I started doing over that period after the initial final exam period where I started feeling better was I started taking this multivitamin pack, which included omega-3s as well as 2 multivitamins with a bunch of, there's that bird, with, as well as, all right, hold on. Let me go outside. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I started taking basically the supplement pack. Some of you may have heard about Dr. Daniel Amen. He is like apparently some brain guru. I want to think he's not a total scam artist because I really did find some benefits from using these vitamins for a time. It's got vitamin A, vitamin C, all your essentials, a bunch of I guess some nootropics maybe, and then like omega-3s. Let's see, thiamine. I don't know, a bunch of stuff. But Dr. Daniel Amen, he has a company called Brain MD, and the specific supplement that I was taking was Brain and Body Power Max. I kind of just stopped taking it, but I did notice, maybe it was from the fact that I just had some rest and, a little bit of time to de-stress, but it did seem like taking that made a huge difference for me. It kind of I think helped accelerate me to a place of, more mental clarity and whatnot. So Brain and Body Power Max, yeah, it was kind of expensive. I think it was like $120 for a month's supply. But what I did was I just took a month's supply over 2 months. So it was like $60 a month. But I did think it kind of helped, with my energy levels and as well as, just like generally boosting my immune system. Like I couldn't really tell you the last time I was I was sick. But then again, mainly that could be also due to just like better stress control and better sleep. So Brain MD is the company, and Brain and Body Power Max was the supplements. But there's a ton of other ones that you guys should really look into if you're interested in any vitamins or supplements.
Thank you. That was a great talk from Dane. Today I have Emily, who is also part of McGill Students for Concussion Legacy Foundation, Nick from Concussion Talk podcast, and his new co-host, Aaron, who is the coordinator of programs and services from the Newfoundland and Labrador Brain Injury Association, joining me. So what did you guys think of Dane's talk?
Who's going to go first? I guess I will just start talking. But I thought it was great. That was very thorough, and he really knew and understood himself. I know he had a bunch of issues and stuff. I understood like what happened to him, and it was good to hear that even though he was going through all these issues, that he wasn't afraid to speak. And in like the stereotypical idea of football and sports is that you just don't talk about it or ever. But he's obviously very willing to talk about it and share his emotions and his struggles, and I thought that was excellent. So.
Yeah, I think it was awesome him talking, being like really honest about how he when he got, was it the first concussion? I think, and then he didn't want to tell his coaches, so he's like, I'll just suck it up.
Yeah.
That's so typical of what we hear from athletes. That's like the concussion. We have our support branch, but then our education branch goes into schools and talks about why it's important to speak up, and like we're really trying to avoid this exact situation. And we're trying to hope coaches understand that they shouldn't be angry with their players. But Taya, you're an athlete. I was an athlete. Like, it's scary when you had to tell your coach that you couldn't play. Like, I played 4 broken wrists. Like, it's crazy.
No, for sure. Like it. And also as like an athlete, like, I don't know, I really just cared about playing time. I just wanted to be on the field, and like I felt like to me, like having a concussion was like a sign of weakness. And like I was playing rugby and hockey, like I did not want to be seen as weak, but also I was playing those sports, so people definitely didn't see that. But I myself have played through countless concussions, and ones where I just didn't tell trainers or my coaches or even say anything to my parents, but I knew, like after my first one, I knew like what a concussion was, what it felt like, and I would just play through it because, well, I don't want to just sit on the bench for 2 weeks. Like,
yeah. I think it's definitely like a delicate balance between how do you make a concussion serious but less scary too. Because the more scared you are to like tell someone, the worse it's going to get. And he even mentioned that, which was so interesting how insightful he was to that.
Yeah.
And just pointed out like being so scared to tell and then getting back into sports and avoiding it, all of that. It was really interesting how raw and like he was able to say. But he definitely learned from his mistakes too, because he mentions the second one where it was like, no, I knew, like I had to sit back and let it happen.
Yeah, he seems very like aware of his situation, like not necessarily now, but like even when he was going through it, he seems more aware of his situation. Like, I mean, he said he cried like on the bus, and I mean, I'm not sure how McGill's the football team was, but I mean, generally in the sports team, you don't want to be crying with them on the bus or going to the bus. Like that's not something that's generally done, and generally like people will be like, oh, what's wrong? Like like I know the situation, so I found that surprising that he was so willing to say that like he did that right in the middle, and he didn't have problems with it, like that he just did that in the middle of the season or whatever it was.
But also just the fact that like he kind of realized so quickly that like this is it. And obviously it wasn't that quick that he accepted it, but he was aware of it. And like when he was talking about in fourth year, like he was more aware of like the effects of concussions, and like he allowed the trainers to come onto the field, assess them, and diagnose them with another one, rather than just being like, oh, look, I'm fine, because he talked about in, I think it was his second year, he was just focused on like the wind getting knocked out of him, so like he didn't realize it was a concussion. And also when he was talking about playing scared, I never really thought about that. Like I used to be like fearless in rugby. Like I would always tackle, and then I remember like coming to university and playing rugby for McGill, and like I was a terrible tackler because I was so scared.
Yeah, that was like one of my biggest issues is I really wanted to play again, and technically at the time the doctors were saying, well, you've only had 2 concussions, so you can still play.
Yeah.
Yeah. The second one, like, it's been 8 years now, and I'm still dealing with it. But I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna play again, and I did end up playing a couple games. I think my last year of high school, I got the injury my first year of high school. But for so long, I remember my therapy being really like, get her back on the field, focus, get her back on the field, focus, and we spent so much time working on like my reaction time and my balance, and meanwhile I'm like so like don't know what's happening in my brain, but my body's like, my muscle memory is learning again. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I think I stepped back on the field the first time, I think I started like it was like headaches all the time. Every time I stepped foot on the field. And it was just like my brain like panic. Like for years, anytime somebody came at me, I was like came towards me too quickly, I'd jump. I was so scared. And Taya, we've heard people, and we were talking to a neuropsychologist one time, and she was like, there are patients who will like duck under like 12-foot door entrances.
To walk through doorways.
Oh yeah.
Because there was one girl who came to the support group a while ago, and she like I think it with the going through doors, like she was worried about I guess she'd been hit by a door and she'd gotten a concussion from it, so she always had like her brother or someone like walk, I think it was like behind her or in front of her, and it's so crazy that I don't know. And just to think that like what Emily said about like your trainers are just like, let's get her back on the field, like, you know, like you've only had 2 concussions, you're fine, your bell's been rung twice, but it's fine, like don't worry. Like, and I mean, like I remember my first concussion, I got smashed over the head with a hockey stick, and within a week I was back to playing because I'd passed the test. Well, the tests weren't hard to pass, like
count. I was strapped into this machine and the floor would move. I learned how to count. I knew it.
Yeah.
It wasn't randomized. Like, it was a timer.
And athletes, to get back to their game, they can do it easily. Like, it's not, the protocol has definitely gotten better over the years, but still not great. But it's just like, that's the primary focus, is just to get the athlete well enough to get back to the game, not get them good for life, just like to be good enough to play again and potentially get another concussion.
Yeah, and half the time too for athletes, like the game is their life, like that's what they want to get back to. So it's obviously they're gonna only get themselves good enough to that point because that's all that really matters to them in that moment.
Yeah.
Actually, Aaron, I wanted to ask you about the I just want to take over the hosting duties. That's yours, Taya. But you did behavioral neuroscience, and so they talk about discussion about the like ducking under doorways that are you're like 12 feet high and like you're like 5'5" and like you duck under a doorway. That's that high, like that type of thing.
I think that's like PTSD.
Yeah. It sounds a lot like the fact where he was talking about the anxiety that came after too. That reminded me a lot of like all those post symptoms, and like if anyone ducks underneath or is triggered by anything, like that's all rooted within the anxiety you feel after. So like of course you're going to be more scared, and of course you're going to get more anxious about these things because you already are in that brain fog that he described so well. And it was just like the brain fog of not understanding, then getting more worried about the symptoms that keep coming up. It was really interesting, and helped explain a lot of why those anxieties stick around, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I was gonna say, Emily, did you find didn't you have practice even or was it just games that you got really headaches when you were on the field?
It was just if I went out to go kick the ball around, not
Oh,
even
yeah?
practice.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but what I was gonna say real quick is there's I'm working with one of my concussion doctors right now, and I had a lot of suspicion of this. It was 5 years ago. I'd come up with this whole 10 as I do it, come up with this whole hypothesis about why I have dry eye so bad. It was crazy, but it came back. I'd have to find it. I don't know if it made sense, but it came back to me basically coming down to this decision that my brain is stuck in tends to lean towards the sympathetic nervous system. I tend to go into fight or flight. And then talking to my doctor just 3 days ago, she was like, yeah, your brain keeps going back into fight or flight, and that's why your vision is kind of getting a little messed up, and we need to balance that out a lot. So I think that's some of it too, is it really is a trauma, and after that it's jarring. And we talked with you, Aaron, what you were saying about it being an athlete's life. It is, and that loss or that losing that thing that defines you, or really you feel like defines you, I think it's part of what causes so much of that trauma. Is that's terrifying to lose who you are.
Yeah.
I had music. Otherwise, I would have been totally lost after losing soccer. Not that I wasn't totally lost. I really
No. Loss in sport is such a hard thing to go through. I after getting injured in second year, I didn't play rugby again, so this is going on year 2 now, not playing, and that's been hard. It's been really hard. So I've just kind of dove into all this concussion stuff now and and kind of try and push to the side. But loss of sport's really, really hard, and especially if he was talking about how he was doing so well too. That makes it even harder. It sounded like he was having great seasons, and it just Yeah,
he mentioned in between 2 of the concussions, it was his best season. He won a bunch of awards too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was essentially his 4th year.
Yeah, I mean, when I had sports abandoned me, it was obviously a lot different than just having a concussion. I was forced more than I could. I couldn't just fake that. I'm just joking. I can walk now. I couldn't walk, and I mean that, and I can't, and I had double vision. So it was very glaring. So it wasn't that. I don't know if that made it easier, but it took the took it out of my hands, really. I couldn't. It's just not that I didn't. I had to say, I can't play water polo. I can't do a triathlon, or I can't play grad now. It's just I just physically, it's not gonna happen. I'm gonna fall down. I'm gonna, fall down or drown, or whatever. So, I mean, that's simple for me.
Yeah. No, that makes sense, because it I know what you're saying, but also I don't know, for me, I guess technically not playing was my choice, but I wasn't getting cleared to play rugby. So what happened with me is I had a knee injury, and they didn't know what was up, and it was still just really messed up. But I'm glad that I had that knee injury.
So you took it out of your hands.
With another concussion, it's kind of, I don't know. I stopped because my knee, but I should have stopped because concussions years ago.
Exactly, but you was taking it out of your hands.
Yeah, and it's interesting how a physical breaking a bone or something will take you out and you accept that, but then if it's anything mental or your concussion, it's no, but I'm physically able, I can still get out there, I can do it, and it's only my mind is slowing me down. But that's not true, because your brain is what's controlling every part of you.
Literally.
I think me and my mom were talking about it, and I brought this up a couple times, is I think that there's such this societal cultural belief, at least in the West, where it's if you believe something hard enough, it's gonna come true.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens. If we believe we can play and not get hurt, it's gonna come true. And that's just total like denial of reality, right?
It's very naive, yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
it was
Because
interesting.
actually, that's just like he was saying. That's just like he was saying. You can't control everything. It's one of his big lessons he learned. Is that he can't
Which is
control it.
so hard when you want to control everything, but you can't. And
I think that talking about control, like for years I thought that I had made the decision to stop playing soccer because somewhere in my head I was like, well, if I play, what if I can't talk again? And I thought I had made that decision. And talking to my mom, I guess maybe like 9 months ago or something, she's like, like you got an assessment by the former head of the APA who I work with, and he said that you can't play contact sports again. And I was like, oh, that's where that idea came.
it's funny.
It's like, it wasn't my choice.
I like so badly, like, and I think I needed it to be my choice for a long time.
Yeah.
I needed that for myself. And now I can be like, okay, I'm really grateful that he said that to my parents and me. He had told me that I have to find something else to do, and I was like, oh, I always wanted to play lacrosse.
That's safe.
Though. Oh, I'll just switch to another sport.
That's basically me. But yeah, like I kind of needed it to be my decision for a long time. The other thing that he brought up, and Aaron, maybe you have some input on this from your work, is he was talking about that social anxiety he feels, and like how do we get over that, right? And I know the support group that we run provides
a lot.
But and it provides a space for us to like feel comfortable, like feel stupid. But I think there came this point where I was like, I just felt so disconnected from the world and other people that I just felt awkward and stupid. And it's carried on to now to where like I'm still pretty okay in conversation, but I still will always walk away from a conversation thinking that I was incredibly awkward. And I have no idea, but it kind of
and like you're not an awkward person. You're not.
I know exactly.
People talk to anybody,
and I always feel uncomfortable about it. And I really, really related to what Dane was saying about that.
I think it's very evident too with university students as well, because there's so much social things that are happening at that time in your life, and if you have a concussion, any brain injury whatsoever, like you're gonna get much more fatigued easier. You're gonna get overwhelmed by a lot of sensory things, which is parties, which is a lot of what people are doing. You're gonna be trying to approach new people and try to have a normal conversation, but you might not find the words right away, and that's gonna make you feel worse. It's like all of those combined, when you have that brain injury, it's just gonna make you feel worse and worse and more awkward. And the social anxiety, I'm not even surprised how much he talked about it, because I fully believe like anyone who's had that injury will experience some of those effects until they reach a point of a support group or good group of friends that understand I'm not always going to be 100%, but I'll always show up, kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, what'd you say, Taya?
Taya froze her. Oh, there she is. There she is. Now she's back. I think, or no, is she? No, yeah, I can't tell.
I haven't done anything. Your microphone, that was weird.
Oh, I heard my voice echo. It confused me. I thought it was you, but I think it was my echo. I think that whole like the social situation like really tanks for me. It really tanked my self-worth, which just continued, which becomes an issue with recovery because you don't need to, but it's really difficult.
You need confidence to do your
negative self-worth comes in.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dane's awesome. Like now he's studying for his
MCAT, applying to med school. Yeah.
Do you want
it
me to
really
go to
made me
McGill?
wonder if you wanted to do sports medicine too.
Yeah, I think he's saying he's not sure exactly what he wants, but I'm sure. I don't know.
Emily's sure. He also I feel like the whole like just like social stuff is also heightened so much because at McGill, I feel like the average person is self-conscious about being smart enough, and because there's just so many people who are like ridiculously smart at McGill. And so even the average person, and then throw on having a concussion and trying to recover, and like the Students for Disabilities office is horrible. So you're like doing everything by yourself. And he was talking about how like for finals, he just like locked himself in a room and tried to study, and like everything just came back worse and stuff, and like just crazy. He also talked about how like the Buffalo protocol really helped him.
I think it's another interesting aspect, like a dimension of the social anxiety, is the loss of identity we talked about too. Yeah. Like he just lost his entire like personality almost in a sense of sports. Like he can't do that anymore. So that on top of like all the anxiety you already feel, it's like, oh, well, what do I talk about if I can't talk to the guys about the game we just played? Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think people don't realize, I mean, even athletes don't realize how much their sport is part of their identity, like how much it's like embedded in everything they do.
Yeah.
So it's just a sport to some, but like it's really not. It's not just a sport. It's life.
Socialization. Yeah.
That's your commitment.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah.
It's Taya. That is something that we've come to struggle with at McGill, is the lack of understanding with concussions. Man, there was this really good guy there, and he got a job.
I know, he's gone.
For him, he got a job.
I know. Yeah.
It's it goes to say that this difficulty in explaining concussions to people that haven't been through it is not, does not exclude the people that we're supposed to get help from. It really doesn't. And that's it's sad.
It's really hard. And especially if you are dealing with a concussion, how are you supposed to, like, you've already got all this social anxiety in you, and then you finally work up the courage to ask for help, and then you're shut down or not given the resources you need. Well, that's not helpful.
Or even not taken seriously either. Like, I found it interesting how he noted, like, the first med he was given wasn't an like depression medication kind of thing. I was just like, that doesn't seem connected. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, I assume what he was given was like trazodone based on what he was saying, and but yeah, they didn't give anything for like his, I don't know, anxiety, or try and like figure out like what's going on. Like he said, like his body literally felt like a chemical cocktail, like, and whatever they gave him was making him feel so much worse.
And the anxiety, those panic attacks must have been just, I mean, if it had already felt like a cocktail, those panic attacks definitely did not help at all. Like those can be really debilitating.
Yeah. But on a positive note, though, when Dane gave his talk about a month ago, so I guess, it was about a month ago, he said that he's been symptom-free for a year and 3 months. So I guess now it's like 4 months, which is awesome. And he talked about how it changed him forever. It emerged, he's come like out like more self-aware, healthier, and it truly was a blessing in disguise for him.
Yeah, he attributed a lot of that too to that exercise program that the doctor had recommended, right? Yeah.
Buffalo protocol,
I think that's what's confusing for me, and I don't know, like.
He sent me his sheets. If you want me to send them to you, Emily.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I still find myself a little exercise intolerant, and I've never said anything because I thought I was supposed to be done with the concussion. When I got sober, it turned out I was.
You're no better than that, Emily. Tisk.
Yeah, I still have the concussion, so the exercise intolerance might still be due to that. The other thing, I think Dane with such a, intense medical narrative, I think it's going to make him a really good doctor one day. And I think he's going to understand how do we understand the individual and not oversimplify and overgeneralize?
Literally.
Yeah, and even when he talked about
doctors. Oh, go ahead. Go for it.
I was gonna say, even when he talked about like the supplement multivitamin pack stuff too, he was aware that like they might not even be affecting him. It could just be the fact that he was resting, anxiety free, kind of less stressed. And I was like, man, you already thought about everything.
Time to reflect on everything. And yeah, he's so self-aware, and also just like the fact that like he was comfortable enough to get that vulnerable with, I mean, people that like he's never met. Like I think majority of the people there were people that he'd never met before. And I mean, now it's gonna be on a podcast. Like the vulnerability was amazing too.
Yeah. It was awesome. Erin, do you have anything else?
No, I think I made like a note sheet because I wasn't sure what we were doing, but I like wrote down notes while we went through.
Yeah.
And we hit on basically everything I put down. But I guess the final point that he really drove home to me was the absolute need to slow down and then also commit yourself to like a program that's helping you.
Mm-hmm. So definitely.
Learning that.
So important, and it's so important.
It is really important to take the time for it.
Yeah,
I agree. That's a really good point.
Yeah, that's honestly the most important point ever.
Yeah, it's just it's unfortunate. But it's, no one else here is just time, but that's Frank. That's like that cure all really.
Yeah. So thanks to Nick for helping us do this podcast, and thanks again to Dane for sharing, and Erin and Emily for joining us today. We'll have a new podcast posted Monday morning. Our upcoming podcast can be found on concussiontalk.com, Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. You can find more information about our group on concussionmtl.com. Our peer-to-peer support group is free and open to everyone. We hold 3 weekly meetings on Zoom, which we will link in the description. Thanks. HeadCheck Health bridges gaps in concussion care through simple, powerful technology. Join organizations like the Canadian Football League, Trek Factory Racing, the Canadian Junior Hockey League, Eastern Washington University, and Volleyball Canada, who rely on HeadCheck to improve communication and optimize care. Visit headcheckhealth.com for more. The music at the beginning of this podcast is by Ben Sound. www.bensound.com.